You're listening to Real Talk Texas with local expert Steve Hakes. Now, here's Steve.
Welcome back to Real Talk Texas. I'm your host, Steve Hakes. Today in the studio, we've got Jim Striegel of Coldwell Banker and Grapevine. He's a great real estate agent. He's one of the top 1% agents in the Metroplex. He's also one of the top 100 buyers agents in the Metroplex. He's got a diverse background in business. He's very successful, and we're real pleased to have you in the studio today, Jim.
Thank you.
And the last segment, we were talking about, what it takes to buy or sell a home and what's going on in the Metroplex. We've heard double offers, multiple offers on homes if the house is presented correctly. And I think a lot of sellers have really gotten the impression that, hey, it's a seller's market. Maybe my house is worth $300, but maybe I'll put it out there at $360 and see what happens. How do you deal with that mentality?
Number one, when I sit down with my clients, I think when you're selling a home, the first thing you should always do is get an appraisal. I have all my homes appraised before we put them on the market. And the reason is, we can do a flow sheet that shows the low sales, the average sales, and the high sales. And when it all comes down, it's whatever the lender appraises the home for is what your loan's going to get, and that's what they're going to accept on the price. So one of the things recently I just went to a house, and it was a house listed in Southlake for $1,350,000, and it had 5,920 square feet. And I told them they were overpriced, and I said they need to turn around and get a real appraisal so they would know where they are. Well, yesterday it came back. Number one, they had more square footage. They had 6,175 square feet, so they got more square footage.
So the tax roll was different than the
That's
actual.
right.
Well, I found that a lot with the people that had a house built.
Uh-huh.
And the tax rolls were based on maybe the original plans, and then they changed it or something like
that.
Right,
and they'll add on, and so the tax roll won't show it. So this home, having the 6,150, what happened was now it appraised for $1.2 million. Well, 6 months ago, if this agent would have had it professionally appraised, they wouldn't have been on the market overpriced, and they were frustrated because they weren't getting showings. One of the things a good real estate person does when they're working with a buyer, and even if you're showing your listings or any other listing, is you do a market analysis of where it's priced on low, average, or high. If it's above high and overpriced, you're wasting your time because obviously they want more than what the home is worth. So the key in pricing a house is literally looking at it, condition. They say, why doesn't a home sell? Price, condition, location. So you got to look at those three items and price it properly. And by having an appraisal, if you have an appraisal hypothetically at, say, 305, it doesn't mean you wouldn't list it at 314.9 or 310.9 or whatever. You just have to price it up properly because everybody wants to negotiate. So that's the key, and the number one thing that we do different is every home is appraised before we put it on the market.
And I will tell you that the new appraisal independence rule that's out there from a mortgage standpoint, what we call AIR, really the appraisers, and I've talked to several this year, have in our Metroplex have had some challenges keeping up with the values going up. I mean, values in North Texas have gone up about 8 or 9% since the beginning of the year. And so one of the things they have to go on what has actually sold. And I have actually seen several people buy a house at a certain price, the appraisal come in $5,000 less, and they'll come up with that extra $5,000 because they still feel it's worth that money.
Yes, that's what's happening without a doubt. I mean, I've had homes, though, that in the neighborhood appraised for $575 that now I'm selling at $610 or $615, and they're appraising because the sales are going up. And you're seeing it. And really, when you go to purchase a home, whenever you look at what it costs to build a home and what you can buy pre-existing, it's amazing the difference that you should look at it. If a home is really updated with nice granite and nice hardwood floors and marble flooring, and even if it's a $400,000 home, you will get top dollar, and you will find out that you're better off buying a pre-existing than a new sometimes if it's equal because of the price. You will get a better price on pre-existing than over new. And
so the appraisers they are catching up with that. And that's a trend that's been different than since 2007 we started having the meltdown a little bit. And we've been really, really fortunate in North Texas. I mean, our values have dropped maybe 10, 15%. And I say they're snapping back in 2013. I mean, I think we're going to make up all that ground that was lost probably from 2006 to 2008, when we had kind of a meltdown, more of a meltdown in California, Nevada, and Florida, places like that. Unfortunately, we sold our place in Naples in 2006, and we didn't. It appreciated for about 3 years, but then we sold it for what we paid for it. So we felt like we got out at the right time in Florida. Now, Florida still hasn't come back. I've talked to some people recently down there that are in the business, and they say their market is starting to stabilize rather than snap back. But in North Texas, we're real fortunate. I think the values have really snapped back, and what I was telling a client yesterday, and they were he had a little bit of credit ding or whatever on his credit report, and he said, well, I'll just wait until my score gets above this, and then I'll buy. And my advice to him was, you got two things working against you there. And number one, we can do credit scores down to 580, so we're okay to get you a loan. But you're waiting. Interest rates are going up every day, and if they go down a little bit today, they're going to go back up. In what I'm seeing in the last 60 days, they may come back a little bit, but they don't come back that much, and then it goes back the other way. So they are creeping up. And then the other thing is that home prices are going up. So I think if you're really thinking about buying a house, you better move quick. And that's what I told him. I said, I think, if you wait 6 months, your payment may be even higher than if you did your loan based on your current credit score.
Yeah, I think one of the things Texas has going for it is, number one, is our housing prices are much lower than a lot of the rest of the United States, number one. Number two, the quality here of what you get in the product is quite well done, and it just makes a big difference. When I get people from California and the East Coast, and they look at our prices, they go, wow, they can't believe they're so inexpensive. Now, there's a catch-22 is something I always tell them is just don't jump at list price thinking that that's a great deal, because you need to educate them that if you overpay when it goes to sell, you got to remember it's going to cost you basically 7.5% to get out of the house when you do commissions as well as closing costs. And people don't always look at that factor. So when you're purchasing a home with a person in Texas, you need to look at all aspects. But you have more and more people moving to Texas because it's a great lifestyle. You have great state. Financially, it's a good state in great condition. And I think you have all these companies that
it's very employer-friendly,
right,
with the right to work.
Absolutely.
Things like that. So, and if you're driving around in some of this construction that we've been having the last few years, there's a reason for that. And Texas A&M School of Real Estate publishes a report every year, and I lean on that a lot when I talk to realtors about what's happening in the market in North Texas. And basically what we're looking at is we have just around 7 million people in the Metroplex right now, just underneath that. And they're predicting that by 2030, we're going to have 12 million people here. So that's why we're getting all these widening of the highways. We're planning for that growth. What I'm trying to figure out, and why I think Jim, you and I are in the right business right now for the next few years, is where are these people going to live?
Absolutely.
And I see a lot of new apartments being built in the downtown area in Dallas and in Las Colinas. We see it there. In Fort Worth, we're seeing apartments being built. And the home builders are actually very, very busy right now. And then the other piece of it is, we just don't have enough inventory.
Right. You don't. And I think the other thing you're finding when you're talking about, people living in apartments and stuff, this younger generation, their idea of life is different than what we are. They don't want the acreage. They don't want the 1 and 2 and 3 acres. They want a lifestyle that they can walk everywhere. And that's why you see, uptown, and both of my kids live in uptown, and they're friends, and they all grew up on 1 to 2 to 3 acres out there by Grapevine, Flower Mound area, South Lake. And you find it that this whole generation is saying, I don't want all the upkeep. I want to live in the city, and I want that lifestyle.
You're singing my tune, Jim. We get into this every week on the show about my War of the Roses with my wife, Dana, that I'm an empty nester now, and we'd really like to be down. I would really like to be downtown in a high-rise. My son lives in uptown as well, and he and his girlfriend were the ones that introduced us to that, and that's why our office is down there, because we like that ability to walk around for lunch, walk to dinner, happy hour, all those things. But Dana, of course, I know you're probably listening. She still likes the Colleyville area. That's where most of our friends are. We were there 15 years, so it's kind of hard to pull up roots at our age. But on the same token, there is a lifestyle thing there in That's why there's a lot of great opportunities downtown. If you're looking at that, I'm sure you get involved in some of those sales too, right?
Absolutely. I just did a house over here that was a nice 3-bedroom house in University Park, and it was a nice one-story with a pool and $589, and you don't get a lot of nice high-quality homes at $589 in Dallas. But this one was a really nice house on Fairfax.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful thing about Jim's firm as well. If you engage with him and his team, they do cover the whole Metroplex. Being located in Grapevine, you're listening to Jim Striegel of Coldwell Banker. He's in our studio today, and he really has a reach all over the Metroplex. He has people that specialize in Tarrant County as well as Dallas County, and so he can represent you on both the buy and the sell side.
Yes, we can. It doesn't matter what area you are. We work with everybody in the Metroplex.
And if you've just tuned in, earlier Jim talked about some of the specials that he has and how he makes the home buying experience so much easier from a consumer standpoint. We're going to talk about that more in the next segment, so you want to stay tuned to Real Talk Texas here on KLIF AM 570 News and Information.